This painting is entitled Communion of Saints. I started it before I was Catholic, but I always liked the stories of St. Francis. It's kind of a parody of Francis's sermon to the birds. There's a painting by Giotto that, in my estimation, is not his best work, but it tells the story. For some reason, I've always been fascinated by passenger pigeons. And I don't remember how I got the idea for this. It just sort of popped into my head. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to have St. Francis preaching to these extinct species? So I have 4 passenger pigeons. The one in the upper left is Martha, the last passenger pigeon who died a little over 100 years ago in the Cincinnati Zoo. So she's in there. The other ones, I think, are, a couple of them are based on the passenger pigeon images by John James Audubon. And the one with its back to us, I forget. Because I started painting that in the 80s. And it was real pale and beautifully spontaneous and lyrical. And I just couldn't go another inch on it because I knew I'd ruin it. So I'd look at it maybe once every 5 years. And I finally got around to revisiting it. And just like I knew I would, I ruined it immediately. But eventually I brought it back. So he lay dormant for 40 years before I finally made him happen. It's pretty much the painting it started out to be. Instead of silhouettes of passenger pigeons in flight in the little medallions around the edge, I eliminated some of those medallions and replaced them with Carolina parakeets, which are also extinct. Those 2 were taken from John James Audubon images. And there's a dodo. I kind of made it up out of my head, also extinct. And then I added a little, a nest of one of the passenger pigeons. They were real twiggy, messy looking nests. And I've got that in there too. I love Roman numerals. So I have Roman numerals for the year that Martha died and Roman numerals for the years on which I worked on this picture. Beneath St. Francis is MCM XIV 1913. That's the year of Martha's death. And then, like I said, I've got the dates for the year I started the picture and the year I finished it. Okay, so Martha was the last passenger pigeon. She keeled over stone dead on her perch at the Cincinnati Zoo in 1913. I don't remember the exact date, but it seems like it was 12:01 p.m. They know the exact moment that the passenger pigeon became extinct. 20, 30 years before that, there were still flocks and flocks of them. Millions of birds would darken the sky. John James Audubon remembered seeing flocks that would take hours to pass over.
What happened to them? Were they hunted?
They were a really cheap source of meat. There were tons and tons of them shipped in refrigerator cars back east for the poor people in the slums of New York and Chicago. They were cheaper than beef. And we actually at the museum here in Fairfield, we have 2 female passenger pigeons and 1 fledgling pigeon. We don't have a male sample or specimen. I'd like to get a male passenger pigeon sometime, but they're not real easy to come by. The flowers, the oversized flowers that the birds are perched on, are x-rays from images that appeared in a magazine, maybe Smithsonian magazine, back in the early 80s. And I really like that particular flower. I think it's a columbine or something like that. I exaggerated the length of the pistils and stamens. I didn't make it look like an x-ray like I had hoped to. That was beyond my skill level. But they're still lyrical and oversized. I like playing with scale. I like making big things bigger and small things smaller, and small things big, and big things small, and play with those size relationships. The figure of St. Francis himself started out as a self-portrait, and there's a vague resemblance, but it's not, there's no real attempt to make it look like myself. I think I've got the cheekbones of what I had when I was in my 20s, and the figure itself is based on a statue you could buy at a religious supply catalog. It was one of those catalogs with 50 pages of plaster saints, and I really liked the way Francis' arms are crossed on his breast. And I had no intention of doing this in the beginning, but within about 3 weeks of completing the picture last year, my hand twitched or whatever, and there was this random brushstroke on the back of his hand that looked like one of the stigmata. And Francis received the stigmata, I think, the year before he died. The stigmata in my painting are green, making them eco-friendly, and I think that fits very nicely with the spirit of St. Francis, and at least our perception of his spirit in our eco-conscious world today. I was a little hesitant about pursuing the green stigmata, because it's kind of silly, but kind of profound too. So it's a nice marriage. I like the whimsical. I like things that seem goofy, but when you really think about them in retrospect, that there's a deeper resonance that speaks to the heart in ways that something more serious might not be able to do, or something. Oh, and the bass, that was kind of fun. He originally was just going to stand on this little round cylinder, and one thing led to another, and the scallop along the bottom of the pedestal is Indian. It's from like a piece of furniture I saw in a magazine from some palace in Jaipur, India, or someplace. I mean, it's like oh, the other thing that turned out to be kind of fun, on the mat there are all these little cutouts, these little bite-sized bits around the edge of the white mat. That happened because even though I score off a border around the edge of a panel or a canvas, it's like it's the point of no return. I don't go beyond that edge, because if I do, the frame's going to cover up a crucial bit. Well, I never managed to stay within that line. I always kind of nudge a little past it, and of course that happened with this. And when we went to mat the picture, it was covering up bits of the flowers that just chopped it off and killed the elegance of the composition. So Chad Starling, my framer, and I worked out a system where he would cut out these little notches, and then I painted the edges with blue, and it really makes a nice little added touch that isn't real obvious at first glance, but when you become aware of it, it takes the picture a little past your hack job, just cutting a hole in a mat and slapping it into a frame. And then Chad had a really good idea too. There was enough room in the frame to put a spacer, so he put that kind of crimson suede spacer around the perimeter of the drawing, around the edge of the gold mat, and that really gives it a nice pop. So I'm really pleased with the way this turned out, and it only took me 40 years to get it done. I think procrastination has a part to play. Putting something aside because something else comes along that's more pressing, and then you forget that the project that's been set aside that even exists, and then every once in a while you think, oh yeah, I need to get that done, and it doesn't happen. But there's also the fear factor. There's the fear of ruining a picture, and that was very much a part of this painting. It took me a lot of years to realize that I don't have to have it done in one fell swoop, that I have to be patient. I have to let the process unfold and just be what it is and not get too hung up on preconceived notions of what this or that should look like. It has also helped to document pictures as I go, because even if I mess it up, I've still got that really nice color, either photocopy or digital image of that perfect brush stroke that was in the wrong place or it was the wrong color. And I've also learned to use transparent color. So let's say the brush stroke is the perfect, has the perfect degree of spontaneity. It may have just the right shape. There may be everything going for it, except that it's the wrong color. Transparent glaze over that, problem solved.
What was your initial inspiration to paint St. Francis?
Just popped in my head. It's been so long ago, I don't remember. But very often the idea is just, they're just there. And then when I start doing the painting, things progress, and the symbol or the image takes on a depth of purpose that I wasn't consciously aware of in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Or there'll be other kind of peripheral additives that come to mind, and I just start piling it on, probably too much so sometimes, but that's okay.
When I think of St. Francis, I think of him as one of the most, if you will, accessible saints, in that he was humble, he was very pious, he was all about peace, and he was also, everybody has these visions of that he was a friend to all animals. So it's for a lot of people that brings him down to earth, makes him more accessible. Was that the case for you, or was it something else?
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay.
I have no idea. I think I just like the idea of, I like the idea of taking Francis' sermon to the birds,
Yeah.
and giving it a little twist. And I wouldn't call it irreverent, but I would call it playful. I like playfulness in my work. Playful without being trite. Although I do like stereotypes. I do like hackneyed expressions that I like taking things that are old hat and commonplace and reinvestigating and reinventing those things. So the St. Francis bird bath, some of those god-awful statues you can buy, plastic and concrete. I mean, they're just horrible, horrible works of art. Just shabby design, poorly sculpted, whatever. They trivialize the greatness of the man, but it's also part of that accessibility that people who have no taste would be attracted to the spirit of the guy without being remotely cognizant of the artistic merit or lack thereof in the piece they're spending a lot of money for and putting in their front yard and telling the world that they just don't have very, very well developed aesthetic sensibilities. So I like taking something that's as humdrum and repugnant aesthetically as St. Francis and his bird bath, taking that and bringing it home and making it something that I can appreciate, that I can admire, that would speak to my heart and hopefully to other people's hearts as well. And oh, do I sound pompous. I don't mean to be, but it's in there, so.
I remember about 30 years ago, the Pope came to San Francisco. I got to go see him. It's in Candlestick Park, right? The whole stadium. And I lived in San Francisco and I like the name and everything, but when the Pope said, "I'm so happy to be here in the city of St. Francis," the light bulb went off in my head. I said, "Oh yeah, it's a different way of looking at our city because it's named after him." But you don't really think for the Pope to recognize that completely shifted my whole attitude and idea of what that city was all about. Which is pretty incredible.
Yeah. So anyway, I just like the playfulness of this image, taking an old story and giving it a new twist and looking at it through late 20th century eyes, although completed in the 21st century.
So you said you had the original idea 40 years ago. Had you started the painting then, or were you just thinking about it?
It was started. It was, in fact, I've got a digital image of it. I took a picture of it before I started.
Okay.
And it's pale. You almost have to squint to see it, but it has these lyrical, spontaneous brushstrokes, and I was afraid I'd ruin it.
So when did you start on earnest in completing the painting?
We'd have to look on the back. Sometimes I keep like a little journal on the back of the pictures, and I'm not doing that as much as I was. But that one, I think, Chad left the back exposed, so we can read the back. We can turn it over and read the back if you want to.
Yeah, we will.
Oh, 87, that's later. Okay, so in October of 87, work stalled January 29th of 88 or 9 maybe. And then I resumed work in April 2019.
And how about this over here? What's that? What are those notes? I'm probably upside down.
Oh, those are like intercessory brushstrokes. I forgot about that. Sometimes people ask me to pray for them. So I'll just dedicate, like one of the flowers was dedicated to somebody with cancer. I can't remember. I don't remember after a while. I don't remember. Okay, here's what it looked like. And I can text those to you.
Okay.
It's so pale and. Whoops.
I like the pale version though.
Let me back up. I started in October of 87, and then work stalled on the 29th of January of 88. And it stayed locked away in my portfolio until April of 2019. So that's 30 years. And I finished it on the 12th of June, 2019. So it only took me 2 months to finish it. 2 months and 30 years.
But he had 30 years of preparation getting him ready to finish it. He just wasn't quite ready yet.
See, and I have address. There's somebody here, a Minneapolis address on the back. Doug Freeman. I don't even know who that is. And and my Roman numerals, MMXIX for 2019. And then various parts of the picture. Sometimes people will share concerns in their life, and they'll ask me to say prayers for them. And I'm not very good at prayer. My mind wanders, and I feel foolish if I get too pious. Just like I feel foolish after saying some of the things I said in this interview. Anyway, except I feel foolish in front of God. So I'll just dedicate a section of the picture to somebody and their problem. One of the flowers in here was for a woman with cancer. And I would send and send text messages with the latest work on their flower. And then I forget. See, I'd forgotten all about that until I read this.
Have you kept some of those text messages?
Some of them.
That's pretty precious. I get goosebumps when I
really?
hear about that. I think that's such a touching thing that either you drew some inspiration, but you're inspiring them with your work. And that to me is like, during the process, I mean, people will look at a completed painting and get some inspiration or getting something out of it. But to do it while you're in the process, I think that's got to be unique, and it's powerful, it's touching, and it tells a great story.
Thank you.
And it says a lot about you.
And it's also very personal.
Yeah, exactly.
And it embarrasses the crap out of me too. Having even said it. It's so private.
Well, thanks for sharing it, because I think it's the most beautiful thing you've said today.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. This is like,
It's also the thing I most hesitated to say.
and I can understand why, because it's intimate. There's certain vulnerability, but I think it's something to be proud of. I think it's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything more you want to say about this painting?
No, I'm just so glad to have it off my checklist. It's my bucket list.